Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
The Lord said, "Woe to you, Pharisees! You pay tithes of mint and of rue, and of every garden herb, but you pay no attention to judgment and to love for God. These you should have done without overlooking the others. Woe to you, Pharisees! You love the seat of honor in synagogues and greetings in marketplaces. Woe to you! You are like unseen graves over which people unknowingly walk." And one of the teachers of the scholars of the law said to him in reply, "Teacher, by saying this, you are insulting us too." And he said, "Woe also to you, scholars of the law! You impose on people burdens hard to carry, but you yourselves do not lift one finger to touch them." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the story of Our Lady of Czestochowa. This, of course, is a copy of the original icon, which is kept in the shrine of Czestochowa in the town of Czestochowa in southern Poland, not far from Krakow. And it was in the first century that a group of pious ladies approached St. Luke the Evangelist and asked him to make an image of Our Lady, something they could remember Our Lady by. And so St. Luke, being the artist that he was, he rewrote this icon. And I say writing instead of painting, it's because in the East they see the icon as something that is on the gospel, that is written in picture. One writer said, while Byzantium brought theology to a certain perfection in words, Russia did so in pictures. Of course, the icon is not only particular to Russia, but many different Eastern countries. But St. Luke wrote the icon, and it was then hidden away in a cave in the year 70 AD when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem. But the Christians kept careful guard over her. And then when Constantine allowed for the free exercise of the Christian religion throughout the Roman Empire, his mother, St. Helena, came to the Holy Land to retrieve the relics of the true cross, among other relics. And this was one of the things that she found, and the Christians there entrusted the icon to her care. And she brought it back to Constantinople, where her son, the emperor, built a beautiful chapel for her. And it remained there for 500 years until Constantinople was overrun by the Muslims. And so today it is Istanbul. I was actually in Istanbul last year. I was supposed to go to Israel. They were bombing Israel from Gaza, so I wasn't able to go. So I got a nice little tour of Istanbul. As you can see, the mixture of the Christian symbols with Islam as well. And Hagia Sophia, which was one magnificent cathedral. And it was at one point a mosque. Now it's simply a museum. Until the Muslims overtook Constantinople, it remained there. And then it was moved for safety to Belarus, which is now Ukraine, near the Ukrainian-Polish border right now. And it remained there for a couple hundred years, until that also came under the attack of the Muslim Tartars. And the legend says that when the battle looked lost, Our Lady was brought to the battlements, and it was there that a Tartar arrow struck her in the throat, that the image began to bleed. And also the sky went dark. And this threw the Tartars into confusion, and the defenders of the castle were able to go out and to rout their enemies. And so the icon was kept protected with her protectors. But for safekeeping, it was brought further to the west, and as the legend goes, the horses would move no further when they reached the tiny little village of Czestochowa. And so they saw that as a sign from God that that's where the icon should remain. As monks were called in from the nation of Hungary, the Pauline Fathers, and they've been in care of her ever since the year 1382. And it was in 1430 that Hussite raiders, these were followers of the renegade Czech priest by the name of Jan Hus, they did not believe in sacred images, and they tried to destroy her. The soldier threw her to the ground. The icon actually broke into 3 pieces. They tried to burn her. They slashed her, and that's the reason for the slash marks on her face. And there have been several attempts to try to repair the slash marks, but they always seemingly miraculously reappear. It seems like Our Lady wants her scars to be visible. She wants us to know that she has suffered, and she can identify with the suffering people. And I think in this way, that is why many people in the post-abortion healing movement have adopted her as a patroness. So, the mission of Our Lady is a mission of mercy. We're not condemning. We don't want to be condemning like the Pharisees in the gospel today. But we want to proclaim a message of mercy and love to sinners. Now, so the icon was repaired, and in the year 1655, the nation of Poland was invaded. Many Poles saw this as a punishment for their sins, their lack of faithfulness. But there was in the tiny band gathered together in the fortress surrounding Czestochowa, a group of about 300, mostly priests and religious. The priests and religious were non-combatants, and they were under siege by the Swedes, who had invaded the country. And the Swedes, of course, were Protestant, and it looked as if King Gustav was claiming Poland for his own. And it looked like Poland was going to become a Protestant nation. But a band of 300 gathered in the shrine of Czestochowa. They prayed to Our Lady, and they withstood the siege of the Swedes for 6 weeks. On Christmas Day, they began to sing hymns, and the Swedes thought that meant that they were well stocked with supplies. Actually, they had run out. But yet they kept up their hope. They trusted in God. And eventually, the Swedes withdrew, and the rest of Poland came to their aid, and they were able to drive out the Swedish invader, and Poland retained its Catholic faith. Shortly after that, in 1683, King Jan Sobieski was asked by Blessed Pope Innocent XI to relieve the city of Vienna. The city of Vienna was under siege by the Muslims, and they saw that as the key to dominating all of Christian Europe. All of Europe would have been lost if that battle was lost. But King Jan Sobieski came to the aid, and first he stopped at the shrine of Our Lady of Czestochowa. He consecrated the nation of Poland to Our Lady of Czestochowa. They marched from the feast of the Assumption, the solemnity of the Assumption, and they reached Vienna on September 12th. And then King Jan Sobieski led the largest cavalry charge in history. They were wearing emblems of Our Lady of Czestochowa, and they were able to relieve the city of Vienna. And so Christian Europe was saved for over 300 years. It broke the power of Muslim domination, the threat of Muslim domination over Christian Europe. But that one victory of 300 led to the even greater victory Christian Europe. And I think of the pro-life movement in a way very similar to those 300 Poles that were held up in Czestochowa. We've suffered many defeats. We've suffered many losses. You know, we see that abortion is still legal after 1973. There were hopes that it would be quickly reversed. And 58 million babies have been slaughtered by abortion since 1973. And now we see that 4 states have legalized physician-assisted suicide. So doctors using their God-given skills not to serve life, but to take life. And Pope Benedict XVI warned against creating a society in which the gravely ill or elderly would be subjected to tacit or even explicit pressure to request death or to administer it themselves. So we see that a lack of respect for life in its beginning stages has led to a lack of respect for life in its end stages, and therefore a lack of respect for life in all stages in between. When I went to the town of Newburgh yesterday, the movie, the Jimmy Stewart movie and the Frank Capra movie, It's a Wonderful Life, kept running through my mind. This city that looks like it could be such a jewel on the banks of the Hudson River is devastated. And you know how many people who could have contributed, who could have made it a better place, have been aborted. We're not giving them the chance to live. But yet there is hope. There is hope, and that's why I wanted to celebrate today the Mass in honor of Mother of Hope, because we recognize that we cannot face the evils that threaten our culture by ourselves, but through the intercession of Our Lady, we can. You know, another sign of hope connected with Our Lady of Czestochowa is when the people of Poland gathered in 1979, right after Pope John Paul II had been elected. And they prayed for 7 days in what they called the Siege of Jericho. They prayed that Pope John Paul II might be able to visit Poland without the heavy restrictions that the communist government was placing on him. They prayed, and at the end of their 7 days of prayer, the Polish government inexplicably dropped its heavy restrictions. Pope John Paul II was able to visit Poland to strengthen the solidarity movement, which led to an end to communism in Eastern Europe, in Poland, and throughout Eastern Europe, and eventually to the dissolution of the atheistic Soviet Union itself. And now we see that churches that were destroyed by the communists are being rebuilt. From ocean to ocean pilgrimage in defense of life would have been impossible under communist times in Russia. So there is new signs of hope, new signs of life. Laws are being passed in defense of marriage and also in defense of life in Eastern Europe. But yet it seems like America is running farther and farther away from God. In 1987, just before he left the airport in Detroit, Pope John Paul II said this about the right to life in America. He said that every human being, no matter how vulnerable or helpless, no matter how young or how old, no matter how healthy, handicapped, or sick, no matter how useful or productive for society, is a being of inestimable worth, created in the image and likeness of God. And he said this was the dignity of America, the reason that we exist, the condition for our very survival, and the ultimate test of our greatness, to respect every human being, especially the weakest and the most defenseless ones, those as yet unborn. But you know, the city in which that prophecy was uttered is now bankrupt. And you can wait an average of 58 minutes for when you have a serious crime to report for the police East to come. So this is, we thought maybe the end would come through a nuclear explosion. No, just visit some of our cities and see the devastation, the bankruptcy, the moral degeneracy. This is, we've suffered tremendous losses, but yet I still have hope. I still have hope that through the intercession of Our Lady, we can turn things around and we can create a new culture of life. We couldn't do it by ourselves. It's too big for us. The culture of death is truly satanic. But our Blessed Mother is the one who crushes the head of Satan. So let's now turn to her with confidence and with hope, recognizing that she can overcome the evil in our time, and that she can help us to create a new culture of life in which people respect the sanctity of human life in all of its stages, from the unborn, the elderly, the immigrant, everyone, and help us create a new society in which everyone will be welcomed, protected, nurtured, and loved from the moment of conception to the moment of natural death. And now we'll stand and offer our prayers and petitions before God, our Heavenly Father. Confident